Welcome back. You're now watching the lifestyle segment on the weekend show brought to you by Holocrunch Popcorn. So we started this conversation last week about the Naira redesign and the economic policies in Nigeria, how it's affecting everyone. And I was a victim. I'll just say to the team here that I have this bad habit, which is street food. So I like to buy okpa on a Saturday morning, come earlier and have that with a cold bottle of water. And today I went with 500 naira notes too, and the lady told me, "Oh, we are not taking this money because they're not taking it in the market." And I was like, "But the Supreme Court has ruled saying we can use our old notes." A governor of Kaduna State says, "Oh, people should keep on using their old notes." The federal government has insisted that you know what, you must pay in your old notes, and we're not going back. Fortunately for me, and there's a good side to this, the lady who sells my street food asked me, you know what, I can take a transfer. But all she needed was 400 naira. But I had to do a transfer. The bright side is that maybe the cashless policy is working. However, same transaction failed 3 times before it went through, which means I had lost about 5 minutes of my time out of just breakfast. And this is me. A lot of Nigerians are going through it. I saw an elder statesman, Robert Clark, on TV yesterday complaining that he had to spend 125,000 naira to get 100,000 naira. Do you feel this is for good or it's just a mess at this point?
It's a mess. It's a mess. It seems like it wasn't planned, or they didn't plan for this ripple effect that this change is causing. And the fact that we still have to go and cash in the old notes, seeing as the new notes isn't even enough for everybody, that's a huge problem.
Well, that's what we'll be talking about today on our lifestyle segment. And we have the experts who know better than we do because I'm the suffering Nigerian who needs help at this point. So joining us we have
Paul Alaje and Kelvin Emmanuel. Hey. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Welcome back. Paul, always a pleasure to have you here. You were here last week. Kelvin was here when this started. What has changed in the last week?
Well, when we look at the political economy, the deadline set by Central Bank for 10th February, which was yesterday, we have seen that before last week, 3 governors ran to the Supreme Court, and another was granted that the Central Bank should change or should not stay with the date that was set, which was 10th February, that the old note will cease to be legal tender. The Supreme Court has since said that will not be the case. And that being the highest court in the land, I also heard that the Attorney General of the Federation say yes, they will obey the court order, but they will also request from Supreme Court to review what that court order is. So we've seen that, and we have also noticed that just yesterday, the Council of Chiefs met. You know, they met and they also made their recommendation. And I can tell you, all they said was not different from what we had as discussion last weekend. So what has not changed is the supply side. What seems to have improved is the queue at the bank and the burning and the fighting, even though it was mentioned that a bank might have been attacked yesterday night within Abuja suburb. The veracity of that information is still subject to verification. We don't know the cause. We heard the fire accident, whether it's an accident, whether it's a deliberate attempt. But you know, anything can happen now. Desperation seems to be in most states, as we had it last week. But for this week, most metropolis, we have seen some level of improvement because of course time. You know, time heals all wounds. So maybe because of time. So, but supply side, which is the real challenge, I'm happy that that was the conclusion of the Council of Chiefs. If the Council of the elder statesmen, the former president, and all of those, what seems to be the challenge here is the new Naira notes and the supply side. The Central Bank governor said, 2 weeks ago, that the bank has received 2.1 trillion naira of old notes and is still struggling to put in 800 billion into the system. That's a lot. So when you look at the shortage of what we have and what is currently circulating in the banks, it tells us that we have a lot to worry about. So we have not really seen that significant improvement in circulation. And to be fair on Central Bank, doesn't mean that the first 400 billion has disappeared into thin air. What many people may not be aware, which Central Bank I believe is aware, is that over 70% of Nigeria, and this is not my figure, it was mentioned by central bank governor himself in one of the events, that over 60 to 70% of Nigeria don't have up to 10,000 in their bank account at the end of every month. What does that mean? Most Nigerians are living hand to mouth. Most Nigerians. If you bought a taxi, most likely, or you bought a vehicle traveling from one state to another, it's common with those bus drivers. It is after leaving the park that they go to the gas station. They never had enough to buy fuel. They never had. So they will go to gas station or fuel station, they'll buy fuel and continue. If they get to the next park, they would have shared the money for the, I don't want to call them area boys, you know, the garage, the road transport union. They would have done all of those. Most people, if you look at the Falconizer, the same thing. So we have these people in their numbers. In fact, the National Bureau of Statistics says those that are living even below those people, because this one can't even afford 30,000 in terms of the expenses, using expenditure approach to measure what they earn or what they spend. They can't do up to 30,000 naira. And they call them people that are living, maybe no access to toilet, no access to potable water, people living under multidimensional poverty. The reality here is that we have a lot of people whose economy is based on daily cash transaction. They cannot do without it, obviously. But we will start seeing improvement over time when people see that perhaps there is no option or there is relative scarcity. But that may affect some people that actually need to hold the cash. If you have a daughter and your daughter is going to a school nearby or going to a day school and she needs to pay a cabman, and you don't want your daughter that should be in class to be struggling with network. Oh, have you received it, have not received it? Or we change to an economy of faith, quote and unquote, where you say, you send the money, don't worry, I will receive it. You know, people may be mischievous. You have all manner of fake alert and so on and so forth. That is why in all economies that I have been to and have studied, there is still some level of cash in the system, even though the level of cash is managed. And for what central bank has put in the system, I believe that there should be people who are watching the pattern of events. And what do I mean by that? If you have spent over 400 billion in the economy and suddenly it appears as though it has disappeared, don't we know that the people who we claim kept the old currency might actually be keeping the new currency because they have the power to buy? Well, if they have to give up 20% of the old currency that will soon be useless to them, they say 80 is better than nothing. I say, like, keep buying from people. And this is why, to this effect, I think the central bank needs to partner with EFCC. Of course, that agreement exists, but because most of the money that are being dispersed, they are now via ATM, which means there is record of who is getting what. So if you check the volume of money people have collected, you can tell that this amount of money has been collected by people and this is the deposit that returned to the bank. So with that, you can know what is happening to money because you now have data. And like she said when in her opening remarks, I truly believe that the data was underestimated. I don't think the central bank looked at it holistic enough before coming to the conclusion. But is the policy good? I support the policy because there are a lot of things that have gone on. Initially, I had my doubts about the policy, even though I still have a lot of doubt with the implementation. But I had my doubt because I was looking at what would be different. But when we start seeing people bringing hold notes in volumes to the banks, then you know that people have actually, I don't know if those money are legit, but they are not legitimate. It could now be that they want to integrate money laundering integration or by layering back to the system.
So, Kelvin, do you think that this February 15th deadline, which is just 4 days away now,
which is not
Wednesday,
because they've stopped taking the old notes.
Exactly. So, do you think it's feasible, or could it be that they didn't take all of this happening right now into consideration when they decided to make this?
I always like to refer back to the Constitution, because if you run a country without laws, it's a banana republic. The Attorney General said that the states don't have local standing. And it's interesting that he says that as the AG, because sections 232, subsections 1 of the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says that for any issues that involves the federating units that concerns the fundamental human rights of the people, The states have local standing to take it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has jurisdiction. And it's quite interesting because if you go back to the Reserve Bank of India, if you go back to the Supreme Court verdict at the bench of the Apex Court in India, they ruled in 2016 concerning this same demonetization policy that was implemented in India. Out of the 5 judges on the bench, 4 of them ruled in favor of the judgment. The government of India actually instigated the policy. The board of the Reserve Bank of India opposed the implementation of the policy because they didn't feel that it was going to improve the metrics that the government was proposing, which was the same thing. In Nigeria, illicit financing, counterfeiting, black money, bringing more people into the tax bracket. They didn't feel like the Act of 1934 that establishes the RBI was justified at the Supreme Court. And in the dissenting judgment of one of the judges, she said that, number one, the executive does not have the power to implement it because it's not provided in legislation. Yeah. Number two, they were not properly, the stakeholders were not properly consulted, which means that the fact that the RBI board is opposing it is a proof that it's not right to implement it. Now, let's come back to Nigeria. You have a situation where, for example, the director, the DG, Deputy Governor of Central Bank, Financial System Stability, is the chairman of the board of Nigerian Interbank Settling Systems. And this is the reason why I believe the Bankers Committee are in on it, because they've not said anything, okay? NIBSS is owned by commercial banks, discount houses, and the central bank. So you have a situation where there are 63 million BVNs, 133 million bank accounts, an average of 3.8 bank accounts per BVN holder. And all these banks are competing for the same pie. And they sit down and say, this is my theory. You know what? Let's bring more people into the banking system. Yeah? Let's bring more people into the net. It's going to work as a win also for the government because the government wants to curb illicit financing. They want to fight terror financing. They want to fight black money. They want to bring more people into the tax bracket, you know, and raise the revenue to GDP ratio Nigeria has. But it doesn't quite work because Sections 20B of the CBN Act states very clearly that the president can ask the CBN to reissue new notes, but on 2 conditions. Number 1, it must give sufficient time. And number 2, if the people come back to redeem their old notes, even after the dates of the notice, that the CBN and the banks are obligated to accept the notes. That's what the law says. So you saying that there is a timeline and beyond this date you will not accept the notes is a constitutional illegality. So the Attorney General does not have the right to say that the states don't have local standing because it's provided in the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. 231(1) says that any issue that has to do with the federating units, right, and that involves the legal rights of the people, and the right to spend the legal tender that has been earned is a fundamental human right of Nigerians.
So, what also worries me, because the way my mind works now is I think about the market woman, I think about the vulcanizer, I think about, because we are now at that level, you know what I mean? Political will should mean something. The president said a week ago, give me 7 days and I will fix this. The National Assembly has been wailing as if they are powerless, whereas the Senate has the right, if 2/3 of the Senate, to remove the CBN governor if they feel this is what's meant to be done. The governors have their weekly meeting with the president. So they come and they have their jamboree, then they go and different parties go to court. The governors forum writes a letter to the president. Is there no conversation where can't they put their feet down and say, listen, Mr. President, this is what we've all collectively agreed? Can't the Senate say, this is what we're going to do if you don't fix this? And then the president who says, give us 7 days, then disappears. How does the average Nigerian now survive? Do you feel the buck actually does stop at the president's table? Because remember the Minister of Finance, I think she heard about this news of the Naira resign like the rest of us. And they blatantly told her it's not in her place. So do you think politics plays a role in this recent hardship which we're all suffering from?
Well, I think it plays a significant role. The central bank had told us that the main reason why they are doing this is to manipulate money supply. They believe that most of the policy they've been making regarding NPR, CRR, and liquidity ratio, it has not really been helpful to tame inflation. You will recall that for several months, NPR remained 11.5%. And at that time, we saw inflation is, even though we've not been able to achieve any single-digit inflation, I think 2 months or 3 months since President Buhari got to office, inflation has remained double-digit as against the target of central bank of single-digit inflation around 6 to 9% maximum. We've not been able to see that. And the CBN feels if we are able to change notes that people own, perhaps some of the money which we call the CEC, which I mean CIC, that's cash in currency in circulation, we'll rake them back to the banking book and we'll be able to control who gets what, when, and how. But unfortunately, you know, the policy is made, and even at the beginning of the policy, one would have thought that we'll start seeing inflation really taking a reverse gear. But there are so many other factors responsible for inflation. I would be shocked if the Bureau of Statistics release inflation figure and says inflation is going down. I would really, really be shocked because
they did it the last time.
Well, it was
0.34%.
you know, you can say that that's a marginal reduction. But now, how much is PMS? How much is Naira in your pocket? You said you wanted 1,000 Naira. Be willing to give up 20% of the value. You are going to have it. You said an elder statesman give 25%. So your 20%, the cost of Naira in your pocket, then it is good. Which means Naira may even be, dollar to Naira may even be doing better than Naira to Naira in a way. So it's a state of confusion, if you ask me. So, but why with Nigeria? You know, now there's huge confusion in the system. You go to the market, not so many people understand the interpretation of the rulings of the Supreme Court. And if you talk to them in this part of the country, they will tell you that's don't go to Ruchi, that's Toto, big English. We don't understand. They've told us to stop collecting. If you believe that they are collecting it, why don't you go and give it to them? But it's not going to come to me. Unfortunately, these people were just introducing them to financial system. And for a large number of states I've covered with my team, we still have a lot of places where we don't have banking presence. A lot of places. Areas, I mean local governments, not one, not two, where you don't have banking presence in Nigeria. Even states that you'll be shocked when you hear that they don't have banking presence in some of the local governments. So here is the concern. Nigerians are confused as to, should we keep spending the old note or should we keep spending the new note? Now, this is what central bank have not said, but from all indication, what central bank meant, they don't want this extension to get to election day. Whether we like it or not. They want to do everything possible to ensure that no matter how they are extending, on election day, there will be no acceptance of old notes. So if you go there, and what is the reason that some of the persons that have spoken in favor of central bank have matched or have mentioned, it is to curb vote buying. Is it good to buy vote? No. Will I support vote buying? No. But we are saying that why it is important for you to achieve that. Also make sure that the people you want to protect their future, the future is not even destroyed today. So how do we achieve that? Is by making sure that their economies don't disappear overnight. Because velocity of money, it matters. And I've said time and again that if we don't manage this well, and you extend to the end of this quarter, and you are struggling to see there's some benefits and digital banking and the 52 Naira people collect and the revenues that go to banks and all of those, this economy may go into a recession.
That's NIB.
And I can tell you, yes, this economy may go into a recession. Why? Because that OPA has lost money if you had not bought it.
The informal economy.
So, and we survive on it. Central Bank says that not less than 80% of businesses in Nigeria, they are not big business, they are not small business, they are micro and mini. Very, very small business. Look, observe the capital of the woman making OPA. Is it up to 200,000? Up to 100,000?
Nope.
Very small. Very, very small.
Makes 2,000.
Those are real Nigerians. You see some of them carry goro on their shoulder and they are comfortable. They just don't want to be kidnapped. They just want to sell. They want to end the cash. We cannot turn that to digital economy. And if you want this to work, economy where people don't even know the difference between digital near money or currency or fiat, you tap. If you use your ATM card, they have a machine, you just tap on it, the exact amount is gone, and the receipt is printed automatically. This is how it's done. Our current level of technology, even though it's advanced, but it is narrow.
To a particular area.
To a particular area. It is narrow. Unfortunately, Nigeria is wide. And we have so many parts of our country with huge population. The last figure shared about rural and urban, I think it's about 50-50 or 49-51. 45-55. So we cannot neglect that huge number that are not covered. Even in some urban center, they see huge network failure. And you heard what Association of Telco Infraco was saying, that they may even support increasing the cost of call by 20%, which means cost of data will also go up. So how exactly do we manage this? In this situation, I think Nigerians are suffering, and I think authority needs to come to their aid. Now, what is the best option for me? Release more, improve money supply. Why do we have to buy from POS? And I've seen all manner of jokes online where POS is buying bears.
And all of those.
Why? Because there is scarcity. Why would you kill if you are going home and you notice that you need to get extra fuel? You will go kill. Why? Because of what? Scarcity. Yeah. If there is no scarcity, you will not see any young Nigerian on the street of Abuja telling you to buy a jerry can of 10 liters for 4,000 naira. There's scarcity. So if there is scarcity, the real thing to do is to solve the problem of scarcity. That will still help the same government, the government and the central bank to achieve quote and unquote underlying reasons of vote buying, according to them. They have not said that is not the reason why we are promoting this policy. It will still help you to manipulate money supply. It will still help you to check whether the currency in people's pocket is what is causing inflation, even though I have a lot of doubts. Because over 60% of the inflation we have is imported. All of us, including him in Babariga, the material is imported. Even if it's own. If he has a middle name called Tokumbo, even him is imported. Even the cap. The materials are imported to the country. If we barb our hairs as guys, the clipper is imported. The beautiful lady there, the hair on her head is imported. Everything we live an import-based life. So when central bank comes with policy or say let's emerge the value of Naira, automatically inflation will come. Because we will now need too much money to buy fewer goods and it's going to have impact on us. So that is unfortunately, central bank has a role to play in exchange rate stability, but more importantly, trade authority has a lot to play on. And I guess I doubt really if we have trade authority in Nigeria, because I think trade authority, Ministry of Trade and Investment, they've reduced activity to SMEs and small businesses, not knowing that when we talk about trade, what comes to mind first is international trade. How do we improve exports and how do we find some level of substitution? We cannot substitute all that we import, but which among the things we import can we substitute for so that we can have an improved economy and we can have improved exchange rate?
Kevin, could you also say that lack of accountability could be a problem from the banks, from the CBN governor, even from the president who gave 7 days and still the 7 days is over? Nothing has been done.
I don't think the blame is with the banks.
Okay.
And the reason is because before the Naira redesign started, was there a scarcity of cash in the banking system? The answer is no. Why will the banks want to sabotage themselves by hoarding cash? Now, every bank has internal SOPs, standard operating procedures on daily cash management. You don't expect the bank manager to take all the money in his vault and put in an automated teller machine for people to withdraw. He can't do that. So the question you have to ask is, has their internal SOP on daily cash management changed since this policy started? Question you have to ask is, how much of the 2.2 trillion naira in old notes that was taken out of the banking system was actually sent back? Leaked conversations that are not confirmed yet says that at the Council of States yesterday, the governor of the central bank presenting to the Council of States said that they had ordered for 70 million copies of 126 billion naira from the Printing and Minting Corporation. And the Printing and Minting Corporation said they have the plates, but they don't have the paper to print. And they've ordered from a German manufacturer to send paper, but they're on the queue. So when I saw that, I was like, how do you order for people to bring in their money? You go on TV, you insist, you create confusion, you insist that there's a deadline, when you don't have the monies already printed on ground. You cannot start a policy like this on a 100-day window, yeah, without having all the inputs on the ground. And this brings back, in line with what Paul has said, this brings back to the conversation we had last year on this issue when the whole policy was announced. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria is chasing shadows. In my opinion,
he's preserving his job.
Unfortunately, he's politicized the central bank. And this is my position. In my opinion, Emefiele's job is to reduce inflation in Nigeria, number one. Number two, you have an outstanding issue of ways and means at the Senate, 24.5 trillion.
93.7.
Andy, Ways and Means was a provision created by the Senate at the amendment in 2007. Between 2007 and 2015, President Umaru Yar'Adua, God bless his soul, and President Jonathan only took 869 billion from Ways and Means. Two presidents. President Buhari, between 2015 and today, has taken 23.7 trillion naira, 26% budgetary support, 74% direct intervention programs. Now the Senate is asking them, provide us records of how the monies were spent. They've not provided the records. That has cost push inflation, because when you push so much cash into the system that is so higher than production output, what you have is you have so much cash chasing so few goods. Inflation happens. That causes currency devaluation, and then you have exchange rate driven inflation, which is what Paul was saying. As the Naira drops, inflation comes in because it costs more to import. Right? This is the issue for Emefiele to face. Why is he chasing shadows?
Unfortunately,
Why is
for
he chasing
him,
shadows?
and perhaps by extension to the president, in the next 1 year, for servicing Ways and Means alone, not the exceeding
1.2 trillion.
No. 5 trillion naira plus. And I will tell you, the
No,
reason,
that's the sinking fund.
no, to service Ways and Means, because according to Central Bank, it is MPR plus 3. MPR is 17.5 plus 3. When you find 10%, that's 20.5%. That's 20% of 23.7.
But what they provided in the 2023 Appropriation Act
Yes.
was actually 1.2 trillion naira to service
You don't understand,
Ways and Means.
because these Ways and Means, we do not know as at that time that it was up to this.
Right, I think this is a good place to leave it, but we need to have another conversation on Ways and Means, because I would assure you a lot of Nigerians don't even understand this, but and this is a conversation which we need to break down, and I would really even want to learn about it. But the reality is Nigerians are suffering from the highest level to the lowest level.
Oh, yes.
I understand that this is something which is important. At some point, we need to bank our unbanked and get the cash in circulation into the bank. But policies have never been our problems. It's implementation. And you can't tell people to pay in money, then you are now on the queue for the paper to print it out. Paul Alaje, Kevin Emmanuel, always a pleasure learning from our problems, because all I'm hearing are problems. Always a pleasure learning from our problems and learning from you people on how to fix it. But we went to the streets, actually. Our correspondent Sam went to the street to speak to Nigerians on how this has affected them. That's all for the lifestyle segments. We'll take a look at what Nigerians on the streets are saying, just so you understand that we are not just the ones talking about this.
Yeah.
Nigerians have their own experiences. See you shortly after this.